Hello, Diocese of the Rio Grande. This is your weekly update for the week of Proper 10, 2020. We're now halfway through our deanery budget conversations, which we do this time every year, coming around, talking to the deaneries about our budget for the next year. And this year, of course, we're not just talking about the 2021 budget. We're also talking about our financial assets, the properties at the Bosque Center, Bishop's Ridge, and how holding those assets impacts our budget, both in 2021 and going forward. I'm sure you remember from last year's Budget Roadshow that the Bosque Center and Bishop's Ridge are for-profit, limited liability corporations that are owned by the diocese. Each of those businesses is an independent business that is in business to make enough money to pay its own bills and hopefully to kick some funds back into the diocesan budget. Up until now, last year, Bosque Center broke even for the first time. This year, we projected an $80,000 deficit at Bishop's Ridge, but for the last 4 years, every year, Bosque Center and Bishop's Ridge have been improving in terms of their budget. And I want to give a huge shout out to Christopher Jewell, who has done some tremendous work cutting costs, increasing the marketing, and in this first quarter of 2020, we were looking good. We still had a long way to go, but we were on the right path. Then the coronavirus hit. And unfortunately, that has meant that tourism has stopped, and that means the income coming into the Bosque Center and Bishop's Ridge has basically come to a stop. What does that mean? That means the deficits that we're anticipating, both for this year and for next, and as long as the coronavirus is around, those deficits are large. So although that we have had this situation of trying to work hard to make those properties profitable, and we've been doing that for a number of years, and we thought we would have 3 or 4 more years perhaps to get those properties to a profitable place, we no longer have those 4 or 5 years. The money's going to run out sooner rather than later. And that money is our savings account. So the question is, should we spend that money on waiting for the Bosque Center and Bishop's Ridge to open up again? Or is it time for us to reallocate those assets, put those properties, one or the other or both, on the market in order to reallocate those assets into endowment funds that would then be used to fund ministry? So help us envision the future together. I want to hear your thoughts. I want you to know that these decisions have not yet been made, and I want to talk to you about who is actually responsible for making those decisions. So it's helpful, I think, for us as we think about this decision, for us to think about the distinction between the property and the program. For a long time, the property and the program have been the same thing. Camp Stoney means Bishop's Ridge, which means the program and the place. But we're at a place right now where if we're going to keep the place, we're going to have to adjust other things in our diocesan financial life. And if the savings runs out, then it will be fair share funds from the congregations that will be needed in order to pay any deficits with respect to Bishop's Ridge or the Bosque Center. I want to make it very clear that if we should have to sell Bishop's Ridge, Camp Stoney, the program, Camp Stoney, the ministry, would still happen. We would have it at another location, maybe more than one location, maybe one north, maybe one south. We would still do the program of Camp Stoney. If we should decide that we need to sell the Bosque Center, we will still have diocesan office space. We'll just have that office space somewhere else, likely at the cathedral or at a church in the Albuquerque area. We will still have the Iona program, and we will still educate and form our deacons and priests primarily through that Iona program. It's just that the participants in that program, instead of paying for rooms at the Bosque Center out of their pockets, they'd pay for rooms at another place. But that ministry would still happen. That's the same thing with clergy conference and diocesan retreats such as the women's retreat. These events would still happen. We would just have them in other locations. We're starting to receive wonderful letters of testimony about how important Bishop's Ridge has been as a place, how sacred that land is for many of us. And I share that sense. I grew up going to Camp Stoney as a kid. I deeply remember family camp when I was a very little kid. When I moved to Texas, I went to Camp Allen all the time to do happening and youth events and all kinds of diocesan and local events. I know the impact that the programmatic ministry of Episcopal Church camp and youth group events can have on a human being because I'm a product of those things. My faith in Jesus Christ was formed in those locations. Having adults who cared about me and my faith made me know that God loved me. Having adults who would sit down and do Bible study with me as a kid, as a teen, as a young adult, that mattered to me. And so I want you to hear that we as a diocese are committed to raising up and forming youth, children, young adults. And we're committed to family ministry. We're committed to figuring out how the diocesan budget and the diocesan assets can support that ministry that happens at the local level, as well as providing diocesan opportunities for camp, for things like Snow Slam, and the wonderful youth events that we have here in the Diocese of the Rio Grande. We have got to be focused on sharing the gospel, raising up leaders, and accepting the leadership of our children, our youth, our young adults. They're not the church of the future, they're the church right now. But the church won't have much of a future if we don't care for and form that next generation and the generation after that. Many of our small rural congregations don't have the critical mass to have a youth group or a Sunday school program that can thrive. But we know the impact that a week at Camp Stoney can have for young people. In fact, some in the Episcopal Camp and Conference Center community like to say that a week at summer camp is the equivalent of a year of Sunday school. You might argue that point, but you can't argue the fact that a week of an Episcopal summer camp is life-changing, is life-transforming. And we need to make sure that that ministry goes forward. Not to put too fine a point on it and being clear that we have not yet made the decision, it may be the case that in order to save Camp Stoney, the program, we need to let go of Bishop's Ridge, the property. I don't know that that's true, but we need to talk about it as a diocese. And you need to know that we're having that conversation, and you need to know how you can participate in that conversation. I want you to understand who's responsible for making each of these decisions we're talking about, so that there's clarity about that. The trustees of the diocese hold all of the property of the diocese, and ultimately it will be a decision of the trustees of the diocese whether to sell one or the other of the properties. I want to be clear that if Bishop's Ridge should ever be sold, the Church of the Holy Faith in Santa Fe, which gave the property in 1963, will be a part of the group that sets up an endowment to make sure that the funds that are used, if that property should ever be sold, that those funds are used in perpetuity for the purpose for which that gift was given, for educational and religious formation ministry. So the trustees have responsibility over the property, and you elect them. The diocesan council has responsibility for the budget of the diocese every year. And so it is important in this moment that council and the trustees are working together, which is what we're doing. The trustees and the council, the standing committee, the bishop. We are all involved in listening to hear your feedback, discerning prayerfully together what God is calling us to do. No matter what our decisions will be going forward, they will be challenging, but they will also be blessed by the Holy Spirit, I have no doubt. So please keep joining us in prayer. Please keep offering your good ideas. It may be that there is a solution here that we haven't yet heard about, or a combination of solutions that are being discussed. We want to know your feedback about what our diocesan priorities ought to be, how you see the future of this diocese, and how you think we should adjust things so that our money, our assets, and our ministry are in line. No matter what we decide, it is of vital importance to me, particularly when there may be people with different opinions. It's important to me that we make these decisions together, that we do so transparently, and that we all participate in these conversations not in a spirit of argument and opposition, but rather from a spirit of acknowledging that we are all working together for God's future for all of us. So my friends, may this difficult and challenging time and this difficult decision that we need to make, may the fact that we have faced this difficulty together, may the fact that we have talked honestly and listened to one another, may the fact that we have prayerfully discerned God's will together, may all of that help us step together into God's future, which I know is bright, my friends, because the one calling us is always faithful. God bless you, Diocese of the Rio Grande. Let's keep the faith together.